So, okay. I wanted to talk about a number of projects that, from a certain perspective, could be understood as, let's say, like a set that conforms like a laboratory for what we're calling possible non-identitary spaces, like projects that somehow construct spaces that conform like counter identitary practices, like counter strong identity, let's say, no? Instead of facilitating the conformation of strong female identity or male identity or class identities, or disciplinar identities also, like knowledge construction. Like this set of projects was somehow selected because they can be they can contain a number of cultural tactics that, within the framework of mediation, of cultural mediation, are exploring this construction of counter-identity or non-identitary projects, and hence spaces, no? Because they somehow take land in concrete spaces that we'll see now. Most of them are have taken place in both physical and virtual spaces in this constellation around Conservas, like a free culture community in contemporary Spain. Very, very related also to what Jaron just exposed, also from 15M movement and what we've learned collectively. Yeah, but let's stuck now to the concrete methodologies and understand like possible tactics that we understood that somehow made a change for us as collective researchers, no, in these projects. So first, it's 5 examples, okay? So first example, let's see if, yeah. First example is the Gender and Technology Group at Media Lab Prado. Media Lab Prado is a citizen laboratory, citizen cultural laboratory located in Madrid's city center. And well, it aims to explore these crosses between culture, science, technology, society, and art, these intertwinings. In this kind of spaces all around the world, there is this strong tendency, strong like tendency to be inhabited by male-only subjects, yeah, and they tend to be not very conscious about like heteronormativity and how knowledge in those spaces is constructed from that paradigm of heteronormativity. And hence, it was urgent to somehow think about gender issues from a very critical perspective within the Media Lab Prado itself. But it was, as I said, difficult because those spaces have their rigid ways of working and being inhabited. This is why the Gender and Tech group emerged as such. And well, I wanted to talk about a concrete methodology that we tested once, which was an install party, install party of gender concepts and preoccupations. So how did we program it? The idea was, well, as I said, these spaces have these very concrete subjects inhabiting them, but these subjects also have their methodologies, and they somehow tend to reunite around certain performativities. And one of these performativities and kind of organizing the space is the install party. No? Install party is a very well-known methodology for gathering together and exchanging knowledge, through, like usually software knowledge, no? Software objects, no, like programs, but it's a very interesting set for exchanging, no, exchanging knowledge at the end. So the experience was about taking that methodology and translating it into the preoccupations of the gender and technology group. So doing an install party on gender issues. So taking those methodologies to talk about the technologies of gender, the main preoccupation was like the main hypothesis, let's say, it's that gender and technology co-configurate themselves. No, gender is a technology, and hence, well, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So instead of installing software, this methodology consisted, as you can see, those CDs with like these concrete technologies of gender stickers, but they had like a number, like for example, male privilege, do it with others, countersexual, sex and gender system, heteronormativity. All those concepts were sticked in those CDs. And the room was, this is Media Lab Prado, by the way. So the room was settled with tables, and the way of installing these concepts was not monodirectional. It was more like through the dialogue, through a conversation on the table. We could somehow have like provisional definitions of these concepts. So it was not copying the concept into your brain, but more like having it circulating, having the question circulating on the participants' heads. No? So there was a team of installers, but we didn't install the concepts like as such, but more like facilitated the dialogue, facilitated the conversation. This is why we call it like a mediation methodology. Okay, a concrete tactic for that moment. Yeah, so it was a trial of translating practices, no, from one area to another, because people in Media Lab Prado by that time was not aware of these issues at all, no, or like at least the majority of them. Second example is mediation tactic. Well, this has the shape of a whole seminar that's still taking place nowadays. It started in this project called 404 School Not Found, also in a public institution in Madrid called Intermediae. This project was a prototype of a non-school that was based on the idea of the error, no? The error in the educative system, education system in Spain, well, and also away far. But the concrete example is Eureka seminar. Eureka, if you look at the word, maybe you find an easy link to Sudaka. I don't know if you've heard about the Sudaka way of well, Sudaka is how in Spain people from Southern America have been called in a pejorative way. No, it's kind of an insult, like you are like Sudakas coming here to take out our jobs and so on and so on. So Eureka takes out those that like reappropriates this word, like to name ourselves as the Southern Europeans. So this is why it's very interesting also from the counter-identitarian perspective. It's a seminar. It's actually a poetry seminar. It's a seminar on languages of the last days of the euro. Like I will talk about it later, but I would like I wanted to start with the name itself of the seminar, no, because it's very counter-identitary at like from the very beginning, no, calling ourselves Euracas is like it's the same strategy as calling ourselves queers, no. It's like, but we are from the Southern Europe. We are the rescued countries. We are the pigs, and we've got to understand how we talk and how we relate between ourselves also in the linguistic sphere. Okay, so yeah, it's a seminar of this concrete tactic was talking about lenguajeadores, which could be translated as language makers, no? It's like in these laboratories, we don't talk about the makers themselves. It's also, again, a translation. It's not the makers themselves as making only like material stuff, not like language is a technology, and we make it. So we understand ourselves as a maker community of language from a counter-identitarian in this case, because it's a seminar that is very, very worried about the linguistic establishment that comes out of these big academies of language that tells us how to speak and how to name things and how to name the world, and hence how to make the world, no, by naming it or not. So, this is a joke there. Every continent must have its cloaca. How would God? Okay, yeah. So and underwater in the cities, no. So where the rubbish goes. Yeah. Yeah, and in this case again, this position is like organizing a seminar around the notion of disposition through language is an experience of like an experiment of looking for other ways of speaking, of writing, of constructing semiotics and semantics through language. So this, like the material, is basically our mother tongue, but the strategy is how to use it away from the official establishment of what can be named and what cannot be named, and perhaps away from narrative and discourse itself. No? This is why poetry is central in this concrete seminar. This is a not so physical example. It's more of a virtual one, GenderArtNet. And what I found interesting of this experience is that it is a cartography. It's an open cartography as of gender art, gender-centered art projects all around Europe. But of course, mapping gender is very, very difficult. Mapping art is very difficult. And so people who's in charge of this, and of course, locating like local territories like Europe in the internet is also very difficult. So people in charge of this project found themselves in a very, very complicated situation. They wanted to facilitate somehow like a representation of the constellation of projects related with art and gender around Europe. It also had like this European grant. This is why it's located in Europe from the beginning. But what I found very, very interesting is that they talk about, and well, we talked about also because I've collaborated with them for a number of times. They talk about semantic tensions. No, no. This is only the third. Yeah, the third example. Eureka is a seminar that takes place like every week in Madrid, and but what's interesting is this poetics of dispossession and also like the starting point, no, like a place of enunciation. Like we are not defined. Like yeah, I wanted to say this. We are not defined by ourselves. We are somehow forced by a definition from the coming from the outside, no, like the exteriority, we are vulnerable because of external issues, but we somehow empower ourselves through our way of talking and our way of expressing through language, like political questions. This gender net is also related to semantic strategies because they talk about semantic. Of course, they gather around a virtual platform. It's a website, and how they decided to confront this tension was by not tagging each possible element like. As you see there, no, like you could tag a project just with the word feminism, but that seemed very strict and small and not so complex for them. So they are experimenting with this constellation of terms, of tags that is actually open and is redefined over and over again through a number of workshops with these artists that are contained in the cartography itself. Also, what interested me to me a lot is that it is a cartography, so it is somehow like a very classical way of representing topographies of projects, but it's reinterpreted somehow through these tactics of constellation and openness. So it's like the reverse of these modern devices of representing knowledge and somehow the world itself. So we could say that it's a counter-representative experience, no experiment. Fourth project I wanted to talk a bit about is the lab-to-lab experience. It came out of also of a Grundtvig grant, in fact, and it lasted for 2 years, and it was the first big experience of a number of media labs, citizen cultural labs around Europe, asking ourselves, like, what are we? Also, like, very identitarian, no? Like, what are we as media labs? What is a media lab? What kind of space does it facilitate? What kind of communities does it integrate? And how do we work? What are our methodologies? What kind of figures are meeting in this meeting point? No, and what kind of knowledge is produced out of a media lab? So. So the first aim was somehow about definition, but it was somehow again counter-identitary because each of the labs participating had very different questions to all these issues, very different answers to all these issues. Sorry. For 2 years, this question about what are we, how do we work, what do we have in common, the answers were growing and growing and growing. And so what we found ourselves at was a definition through crossing. Like every time we had a meeting, the definition of what are we grew and grew, and so it was more and more distributed. So we found private funded labs, self-managed labs, 100% public labs, academic labs, so all merged together. So through crossing, we could define ourselves, maybe again from an exteriority more than from something that comes from within. And something very interesting happened is that in Madrid's meeting, we managed to expand the meeting also with Latin American participants, and they forked. And so the lab-to-lab expanded, not expanded, forked in Latin America, and they started this lab-sur-lab experience. Again, about defining themselves, what is a media lab in our Latin American context. Like we are worried about a number of issues that don't interpolate yourselves in Europe, even when if it's Southern Europe, and precarity also exists in there. But the technological research had different circumstances defined by their own context, and so very interestingly, definition there happened also through the concrete tactic of forking, and so this, yeah, and yeah. And last experience is the concrete tactic of the Fridays Open Lab, again happening in Media Lab Prado in Madrid. This is a kind of event that takes place every week, every Friday in the Media Lab. It's the, Friday afternoons. The Media Lab doesn't program anything like from its official program, but lets the doors open for the local community to gather there and to exchange their projects and talk about new softwares or new hardwares and new ways of using those technologies, or they expose possible projects in case someone wants to join and be part of the thing itself. What's very interesting about this and why I decided to bring it is because very differently from the Lab to Lab, which was a series of meetings that took place for 2 or 3 intense days on different European cities. This is about proximity. It's about local community. It's about facilitating the space for local people to gather around and to have this frequency of meeting, and hence facilitating the emergence of a new community that doesn't easily find spaces for exchanging their knowledge and their questions and their ways of working. Promiscuity is basic in this, and with promiscuity I mean also institutional promiscuity. So Media Lab is okay with letting that space, but the Fridays Open Lab community overflowed the space, and now it's promiscuous and using other spaces in the city depending on their needs. So it's not a radical identitarian community, but on the the other way around. It's more counter-identitarian. It's not they're not wearing T-shirts or on Media Lab Prado. The other way around. It's more it's a mediation tactic that lets its community to just use it as they wish and be promiscuous with the spaces they use depending on their projects, their technologies, and their concrete needs. And with trans practices, we're talking about like trans expertise, transdisciplinary, transgenerational, this is very difficult to find in, like, for example, the academy. Like, of course, you hear once and again transdisciplinary naming of projects, but what do you mean by transdisciplinarity, and what does it imply? Is very difficult in rigid spaces such as the academic field. Again, transgenerationally, like how would, like, it's so difficult to construct, like, to mediate between, for example, children and engineers, no, like all engineers, or how to mix cooking with, for example, like open hardware, no. So these spaces that facilitate trans practices, I think, are very interesting for perhaps a horizon on counter-identitarian practices, and I think yeah, this is pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
Any questions? We've got 5 minutes before we finish. You guys are leaving. I mean, it's thinking about you.
Sorry for my English.
I have one question. This is just because it's something we do in Sweden a bit, is working with sort of digital technologies and old craftspeople who have like generations of experience with textiles or wood or something like that. And in Sweden we also have this, in school we have this subject called slöjd, which comes out of sort of the early arts and crafts movement of handiwork and so on. And we're working a bit with them to try to see, can you integrate digital technologies in this sort of very old do-it-yourself perspective. So I wonder if you have something experience like that, also working with like crafts or sort of older people's knowledge of craft or something like that.
Yeah, well, this is like in the Fridays Open Lab, for example, it's very, very important. Like, as I said, like transgenerationality is fundamental, no? So like this notion of proximity was, well, the place itself is located in a very difficult point of the place in the city of Madrid, because it doesn't really have like a neighborhood life around it. But yeah, it was a big there was a big effort at some point of like inviting old people from the neighborhood, because there's a number of like artisans. They mainly work with jewelry and things like this. To invite them here to have them sharing their knowledge, and it's always like a trial. It's like a constant like experience, like to look for challenge. Sorry, thank you. But yeah, I think the best example is the food lab. Like the food lab, like do you know how to make beer, for example? So experimenting with that process, no, which is very like old crafts related to food. So yeah, mainly these material experiments are, I think, that took place like through food, the food lab.
I will have a lot of questions. I think I will contact you afterwards.
Okay.
Just information. This Eureka seminar.
Yeah.
Who are the people? The people who are visiting or taking part. are people who speak Spanish as first language, or
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have work with. I don't know if you are involved here. Are you?
Yeah,
also-
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I am.
You are not working with people that doesn't speak Spanish as first, or migrant, but they are,
Yeah.
if they are from South America, they
Yeah,
have Spanish.
there's
Yeah.
Ecuadorian people. Yeah, it's mainly local community, so we're working with Spanish. But for example, we had a whole part of the seminar studying castrapo, which is a mixture between Galician and Spanish. No, that's like pidgin language. No, a pidgin
Yeah.
in the north of Spain, and like the possible empowerment through writing poetry in castrapo. There's like an old poet that called Luz Pichel. She just published the first book of poetry written in castrapo, because castrapo has been very undervalued language. Of course, publishing in that language was like unthinkable years ago. So yeah, we've got like local dialects and languages in Spain that are very, very interesting for dispossession of our imposed linguistic system. Also, we are in touch, and we had a brief seminar with people from Brussels. There's a community, like an association in Brussels called Constant, and they did a very interesting sound archive of linguistics in a neighborhood in Brussels called Schaerbeek or something like that. And they were recording how people named things in that neighborhood, because it's like a neighborhood in which people from like all around the world shares the urban space and like also the public facilities, schools and so on, and the squares. So they were recording words and explanations of that, like definitions of that word, of those uses, of those language uses. So and also we had contact with some people from New York who are working like the new conceptualists branch of poetry. They mainly work with internet language masses. So they don't think, they don't believe in subjectivity while writing poetry. They write only with found language online, but they work in English. So those are like, yeah, Brussels, also like local dialects and English. Yeah, we're pretty promiscuous also with this. Like it's from Spanish and from our local point of enunciation, but we are in the like.
And do we find informations? Also
yeah,
website.
there's a blog. If you look for Euraca Seminario Euraca.
And if I want to know more, can I contact you?
Yeah, please do. Let's talk about it like with more time.
Yeah, okay.
For sure.
But
It's an
my
assembly.
interest
I
is-
didn't say, but Euraca is an assembly.
Is
An assembly.
assembly.
Yeah. So it's like the way of organizing is now it's not happening in this public institution anymore. It's in an art gallery, and it works as an assembly. So decisions are taken like in common, like as a group.